Hello, everyone. Dr. Jack Hinderman, and today I want to thank you for joining me as we discuss ways to build a healthier you in regards to the immune response. So, as we kick this off, I want to point something out to you that our actions, the things that we do, the behaviors that we have, are what really give us our result in life. Whether that be with your health or otherwise. Certain actions lead to certain results. And none of this can be more true than if you look into Hollywood and see what actors put themselves through. So I want to start off by showing you this little image here. This is Batman, Christian Bale. He played a lot of other characters, obviously, before Batman. But what you see in this first image would be, a pretty healthy body composition for Christian Bale. In the middle, however, that was when he was getting ready for the role to play in The Mechanic. So he was a meth addict in that movie. And clearly he had to partake in a lot of different behaviors to go from that first image to get to that second image. He really did have to, basically starve himself. And then we go to the next image of him was the next role that he played. He came back and he immediately had to put on a bunch of extra weight to play a role in that movie. Now, my point being with this slide is that, this is the case for all of us. Okay. The only difference here with Christian Bale is that he was doing these actions consciously, where a lot of us are just kind of floating through life, living unconsciously in terms of what it comes to, our bodies and how they, perform and how resilient we are in our different environments. So this workshop today, like I said, it's particular towards the immune system. So here are some tips. First of all, you got to say that, the same things that get you healthy and get you well are the same things that keep you that way, and that it really does take action. So getting healthy means doing healthy or just living healthy. The same things that get you out of trouble are the same things that keep you out of trouble to begin with. So when we look at this, top of the list is, I'm a chiropractor, so I might be a little biased on this, but I will explain myself. Number one on the list there is get extra adjustments. Number two, no sugar. Number three, drink lots of water. Number four, get plenty of rest. Number five, eat simply and nutritiously. Number six, boost up your supplements. And number seven, let your body do its thing and fight it off. You don't get well by accident. Yeah, you do well. The amazing thing is that even when we are living extremely unhealthy lifestyles, that our bodies are so resilient and adaptive that a lot of times we can get well regardless of the things that we're doing to ourselves. Some people, however, not so lucky. So let's look into this. Why did the chiropractic side of this get to the top of the list? I mean, as chiropractors, isn't it just like, don't the adjustments, ain't that just for back pain, neck pain, maybe some headaches? And the answer to that is, yeah, sure. Yeah. Chiropractic care can help with that. But really, chiropractic care is all about the relationship between, spinal mechanics and motion and how that affects our central nervous system, which is the central processing system of our entire body. Okay, so here's how it works. Our brain is constantly taking in information from our environment through our senses. Okay, what we see, smell, hear, taste, touch. Okay. And then there's two more senses. I know you guys learned the five senses. I learned the five senses too, but there are two additional senses that are extremely important that, they just, don't get the credit that they really deserve. And that is the vestibular inputs to the brain. The vestibular, that's the inner ear that helps you stay in balance. And then the mechanoreceptors. What mechanoreceptors are is they're actually little nerve cells that are found in the muscles and joint tissues and soft tissues in and around joints that fire when we move, or when there's pressure, or when there's hot, or when there's cold. And these mechanoreceptors that are firing really help our brain understand, along with the rest of our senses, what is going on in our environment so that we can have a healthy response in that environment so that we can stay healthy and strong. So, I mean, that's it. That's how it works. We were born with this innate intelligence. That's what we call it. Innate intelligence. Innate intelligence is the spiritual aspect of all of us. It's the part of us that is, smarter than our physical self, right? It's the part of us that tells our heart to beat, 60 times a minute, every minute of every day, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, depending on needs. I mean, how amazing is that? Can you imagine if our dumb brains, my dumb brain, had to remember to breathe or remember to cause the heart to contract or beat, or to bring in, white blood cells to fend off infection? Or like, when I cut myself, if I had to orchestrate all of the body chemistry that goes into healing that cut, man, my brain could not handle that. I don't think any of us are smart enough, but we have this inborn wisdom in us that manages all that. So with such an amazing inborn wisdom in us, why is it that we get sick? Well, this is the simplest explanation that we can find, that I can describe to you in terms of how this happens. And really what it is it's the amount of stress that we're putting on our body. When that amount of stress in our lives starts to overwhelm our system, then that's when something's got to give. That's when health challenges arise. So that would be the cause. Okay. So under the cause here, we have physical trauma, chemical toxins, stressful thoughts. Now those three things in of themselves is not necessarily the cause, but really the response to those things is the cause. So everybody's body responds a little differently. Now, what can happen when our system is overloaded is something's got to give, something's got to break down, something's got to happen, right? In chiropractic, we call that a subluxation. What a subluxation is it's an alteration of the normal flow of nerve energy. Okay, it's an alteration to this communication system that is inside of our bodies. Now, a good metaphor for this would be like if you took all of your kitchen appliances, your microwave, your toaster, your blender, and you plug them all into one outlet, what's going to happen? You're going to trip a breaker. Or at least you better hope you trip a breaker, because otherwise what would happen, depending on, how what the size of your wires is, unless it's like super beefed up above code, what you're going to do is you're going to start fire, right? Because them wires are just going to get so stinking hot from drawing so much power. But no, our house has a safety system called a fuse box in place. So how cool is that our body has something similar to that? We call that, again, subluxation. Now, when the subluxation occurs, there is some measurable or noticeable effects that we can see from this. Okay, so one of them is dyskinesia. That happens typically first. Okay, just due to that destructive stress, or the more of a destructive force on our body. What it does, it can cause this defense mechanism and cause things to get, flinch and get stiff and stuck. And that's dyskinesia. That's where the motion component of the body is altered. So let's say that, you're when you stand up, for instance, if you're standing and, we ask you to turn your head, if you look over your shoulder, and you can look all the way back over your shoulder, with looking to the right, and then you go to the left, and this is all the further you got, then what you are experiencing is dyskinesia. In and of itself, boy, well, big deal. I'm a little stiff. It is a big deal because of what happens to the mechanoreceptors. Remember that seventh sense that we talked about, that proprioception coming from the mechanoreceptors? What that does is it alters the flow of energy that goes from the body to the brain through the nervous system. We call that the afferent signal. Okay, so our brain just doesn't send signals to the body. The brain also has to receive signals. In fact, oftentimes it receives signals before it responds so that it knows how to respond appropriately. And if those signals are coming in distorted, then the brain has a distorted look at the reality of what's going on in our body, and it can't respond and react as appropriately. And when we get to that threshold, we call that disafferentation. Disafferentation simply is the signals that are reaching the brain are out of balance. Oftentimes where we'll see this is between the mechanoreceptors, the proprioceptors, and then the nociception. So think of nociception. Those are other little nerve fibers that fire when either we're hot, we're cold, when we get, you can come on and grab what you need. Sorry, we do some homeschooling, so that's what we're doing right now. And I'm taking a break from that to nerd out with you guys on some of this. So if there's going to be little ones running in and out, please, forgive me. It is life for many of us. So anyway, back to it. So what the nociception is it's described as a noxious stimulus to the brain. But what it does is it creates more of a lean towards the stress response. Okay. So when we look at the autonomic nervous system, it can break out into two different parts of the system. We have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Essentially what it is it's different, different molecules that are different neurotransmitters that our body produces to get functions of our body to either speed up or slow down or do whatever we need to do to stay healthy and in balance. But if there's a disafferentation taking place, then what that means is that the brain doesn't understand that. So dysautonomia changes the output, the autonomic output. So we can see maybe too many things on the gas pedal, not enough things on the brakes, right? And some imbalances there that can lead to either underreactive, overreactive types of immune responses. And then the last thing on our list of D's would be dyskinesis. This is errors in energy output and organization. So the brain has to organize and coordinate responses to our environment. And we can have some measurable things on the dyskinesis end of it that we can see that this is occurring. Okay. So this is how chiropractic made it towards the top of my list of things to do, is because we want to make sure that the brain is getting good quality signaling from the body so that it can respond and heal and regulate and do all the things that you were born to do innately. Okay. So that's what that is. We want to be able to adapt to these things. So where a lot of these challenges, that's a pretty cool process, right? But a lot of these challenges that we're finding, especially, as a pediatric focused family practice, we want to see a lot of kids. And the reason we want to see a lot of kids is because of the next two studies that I'm showing you, where we see that the stress of birth is enough in and of itself to cause a great deal of that dyskinesia, disafferentation, some of those nerdy D's that we just talked about. So Dr. Gutman discovered when he evaluated 1,000 infants shortly after birth, he found that 80% of them, this was back in the 80s, okay? He found that 80% of them had what he called KISS syndrome, right? Kinematic, so there's the kinesis movement, right? Kinematic instability and suboccipital strain is what he called that. Now, he found that they had it to a strong enough degree that it was starting to cause interference to the neurological and immune functions of that individual, that baby, which is absolutely mind-boggling that they knew this back in the 80s. And then, of course, he concluded that, why don't we have some kind of a professional there to evaluate the upper necks on these children when they're born. And then if we fast forward several years, this was another article that came out in the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association, November 2015, that said the incidence of somatic dysfunction in healthy individuals and newborns. Now, somatic is simply like, it has to do with embryology, the germ level, the way that the body develops, right? But typically when we look at the somatic part of the system, we're looking at like musculoskeletal and how the nerves how the nerves function within that somatic system or the musculoskeletal system. What they found was that 99% of these newborn babies within the first 6 to 72 hours had at least one strain sprain pattern in that upper neck. Now this is there was obviously a lot more found here than in the Gutman study, but one thing's for sure is that C-section rates they just have been multiplying since the 80s. Where now we're to the point where more than 1 in 3 kids are born via C-section, where there's a lot of pulling and twisting, and it's just a completely unnatural way that our body and our genes and our genetic code just do not understand that way of entering into this world. So these are the children that tend to struggle a lot more, are the ones that are born via C-section. At least that's as far as what we find. But anyway, that's significant. That's significant. So let's talk about the next things on our list. So next, we're going to just move on through the list here. We had fever on there. Now, when I do a workshop, okay, when I do it live, I've done a lot of these live where I'm sitting here and I actually talk to an audience instead of this little tiny camera on the top of my computer, which, kind of gets old once in a while talking to nobody. But I know you guys are out there. I'm going to try to connect with you best I can. But when I ask the question here, is fever a good thing or a bad thing? Oftentimes I get mixed signals on this. Okay. People think it's a trick. Okay. I don't want to raise my hand because, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And what we find surprisingly is that most people say, yes, a fever is a good thing. And then the very next question I ask is, when your child had a fever, think of the last time your child had a fever, what did you do? And then, we get to things like, we took ibuprofen, we took Tylenol, we took some sort of a fever reducing over the counter medication to try to reduce that fever. Well, if it's a good thing, why are we reducing it? Researchers are starting to find that that reducing a fever actually creates a longer lasting illness because your immune response is dampened. So what's the fever actually do? Well, it mobilizes the immune system, which means, okay, you take heat. If you've ever done a chemistry course, or if you haven't, I've done a lot of them, so I'll explain the process here. You take some chemicals, okay? Or it can even be water, okay? Which is chemistry, right? You take water and you put heat to it. And what happens is that everything that's happening into that heated state happens faster. So all those molecules are vibrating at a faster level. So this helps immobilize the immune system. It helps increase the rate of speed that your body's able to get those antibodies or get the white blood cells out and moving into our bloodstream. Okay. It helps the body speed up the production of more white blood cells to go out there and fight the good fight. So the other thing that it does is it increases the production of interferon, which is a chemical that our body produces that helps to slow viral replication. This is all inborn, built into us. We don't need to take it, okay? Although there's some medical treatments where they treat people with interferon to try to stop the replication of these viral cells, but our body has that in its own internal drugstore, okay? The other thing it does is it slows down or walls off the ability for the bacteria to get to our iron in our blood, all right? So we want to make sure that the bacteria isn't thriving and feeding and reproducing itself quickly, and it does more so when there's an abundance of iron nearby. So the increase in temperature can also just kill the microbes, just like you go camping, you boil some water, right? Now, granted, we need 212. You're never going to get that high, right, to get the water to boil. You don't want to do that in your body, but it can have this type of an effect on microbes. And then we've also seen, I've seen personally, in the office where we got kids that are like 2 to 3 years old that'll get just this massive fever. We'll talk to parents and they'll be like, yeah, I got up to like 105, 104. They get these massive fevers. But what's really cool is that there's some sort of a developmental process that takes place when we have these high fevers, because we notice that like these kids, they'll come back and their vocabulary will expand and they'll have a lot more words in their bank, and they just go through this rapid growth in development overall. And I believe that it does affect the neuro as well as the immunology of the body. Those two are so closely related that there's just, that a lot of the newer research that's out there, they don't even talk about like immune system or nervous system. They call it neuroimmunology, okay, because it's just so connected in what's actually going on. So let's talk about different temperature ranges for fever, okay? You do have to be careful for a fever. Now, under normal, healthy circumstances with healthy children, our bodies are able to regulate fever pretty effectively by themselves, unless you're like sitting in a hot car with the windows up when you're having a fever. On a sunny day, 80, 90 degrees out, you can get super, super hot in those scenarios. But where we want to try to avoid is getting into that 106, 107 range where proteins are starting to break down. But anything lower than that is going to be assisting your immune system in doing what needs to be done to get you well again, okay, or to keep you well. Some of these symptoms aren't necessarily a bad thing. That's a healthy response. I want you to understand that that's a healthy response. Just as, developing a bunch of boogers and mucus, that's a healthy response. Just as coughing, that's a healthy response. And when you interfere with that, whether it be natural means, whether it be through medicine, you're going to basically handcuff your body's ability to do what it needs to do in some scenarios. So the other thing fever does is it can promote an appropriate amount of inflammation. We do want some inflammation in this case because inflammation signals healing. That's the first stage of healing, is inflammation. Now, a problem that we do have in the United States with major obesity levels is that when our body composition, when we're over fat and under muscled, for instance, and what happens is our bodies, have a lot of inflammation. Okay, we're in a high inflammation state. And if you're in a high inflammation state before you get sick, then you run the risk of running into a lot more like allergic responses and autoimmune types of issues, because you got your body signaling off with like interferon 1 and 2, or not interferon, I'm sorry, interleukin 1, interleukin 6. And what these do, these are little signals that the cells send to the body that say, hey, we need help, we're under distress. And then, the body sends the army of white blood cells and antibody, production cells to go and take care of that. But so, I mean, it's a really complex system, and you can't simplify it. And in fact, there's a heck of a lot going on than any of us know with our human intelligence that we have right now. Now we're lucky that we have thousands and thousands and thousands of years of genetic coding and innate intelligence to allow us to do what needs to be done here. So think of fever as not necessarily an indicator of how severe of an illness we're dealing with, but think of it as more of how robust of an immune response are we actually having. That's what we want to look at. Okay, let's see. I think I skipped one here. Number 2, no sugar. What's the problem with sugar? Well, first of all, sugar will elevate. When your blood sugar is elevated, your insulin levels elevate. Now, insulin is it's basically like a hormone transporter. It's a transport hormone that the body produces. And it moves around a lot more than sugar, for sure. But you don't want your cells to become insulin resistant. Okay. That just means that the insulin is less effective to move, sugar in and out of the cells, or move like, magnesium in and out of the cells. So we want to really keep that in check. The other thing that happens when we have elevated blood sugar is that, is that it will start to create more of a stress response in the body. It triggers more of those stress hormones, like your cortisol and some of those other things, and it promotes inflammation. And we already know that we don't want extra inflammation, because that's going to throw false flags or signals in the body that's going to cause your immune system to work in a very uncoordinated fashion. So that's one thing about sugar. Now, the other thing about sugar is that when you have high levels of blood glucose, then vitamin C becomes less effective. The geometry of these molecules is very similar, and the receptor sites for the immune cells, will connect to either one of them. So if you have high concentrations of sugar in the blood, then you really, really need to ramp up vitamin C, so that vitamin C can actually connect with the receptor, because if it already has glucose attached to it, the vitamin C is not going to be able to get in there. So that's a big reason. And so when we look at this, orange juice, I'm sorry guys, orange juice is probably not the best source of vitamin C when you're sick, because it elevates the blood sugar so much. Now, if you're diluting it down just to get some simple, fast energy when you're because you're just not hungry, then that's fine. But you don't want to drink glasses and glasses of orange juice just to get the vitamin C. There's way healthier, better ways to do that. So, I think we pretty much conquered that one. But anyway, so you want to keep those sugar levels low. Now, the brain, glucose is its favorite food for sure. Okay. But if you're not like eating a lot of sugar, then your body can produce chemicals that the brain can use as well. So, but glucose is going to be in any kind of plant material that you eat. So especially fruit, if you're eating fruit, like the actual fruit itself, you'll probably be okay. But if you're eating, fruit juices, then you're just getting concentrations of sugar, and that's just too much for the system. So you want to drink plenty of water. You want to drink pure water. That's what you want to have. And the reason you want to drink, pure water is because, our bodies moves chemicals and moves nutrients. It's got to move it around. And the more hydrated we are, the more easily things move around the body. To do that, it's really just literally critical for all cell functions. And when we look at people who run into problems, or kids who run into trouble with fever, say like leading up to like febrile seizures, for instance, from a fever, what we'll often find is that these kids are just dehydrated going into it, so their body's temperature regulation systems aren't working as efficiently. So we want to make sure we're drinking plenty of water. Why do we stay away from the sugary drinks? We just talked about that on the previous slide. So the other thing that happens is when we're chronically dehydrated is that our body is going to produce more histamine. And when we produce more histamine, we're going to have a more imbalanced type of response to things, right? The histamine is what causes inflammation and redness in the skin, say if you get bit by a mosquito or something like that. Histamine also helps to promote mucus production and inflammation. Mucus is really an amazing thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. The body can produce this substance to trap to trap dirt, to trap debris, to trap viruses and bacteria, and then we can create 120 mile an hour winds and just shoot them right out of our nose. How cool is that? But you want that mucus to be at a good consistency. You don't want it to be super thick where it starts clogging up everything, clogging up the sinuses, where that can create some more types of issues. And so that is water for you. So you also want to get plenty of rest when you're not feeling good. Our bodies are an energy system. What that means is that we have 100% energy being used up pretty much all the time. So when you're sleeping, all that energy goes into sleeping, and the brain just fires like crazy when we're sleeping. Who knows what it's actually doing, whether it's just kind of having a rundown of what we did throughout that day and trying to learn and get stronger and create more neuroplasticity or what. But there's this energy. We're an energy system that's constantly going. So you need to get rest. This is why your kids, when they're sick, they just want to curl up and sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep. And that's completely 100% okay. We want to rest and repair. That's what we want to do. The body acts on priority here. So if the immune system is working hard. This immune system requires a lot of energy. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of movement going on the inside that we cannot see. And that requires energy, and it can wipe us out. It requires a ton of energy to sustain body temperatures higher than our normal rate. So when you're doing this, you might want to postpone workouts, especially if you're already feeling sluggish and tired. Now, motion is super critically important, but at the same time, when you're fighting something off, sometimes it's better to just let your body kind of wall off whatever invaders are coming in through our eyes, through our nose, through our mouth, through our ears, through our skin, okay? So that we can isolate these things and let the body do its thing. The other thing you want to do is you want to stay warm, right? When your body has to create heat, it does take a lot of energy. So, sometimes, kids burning up and they come out like with a winter coat on and some blankets. And then you might feel them and go, "Oh gosh, you're hot. Let's take this off." And then the kid's like, "No, I'm cold." Yeah, keep it on, bundle them up, and then monitor them for that. So the other thing that getting plenty of rest does is it really it kind of resets our brain. It reduces our mental stress load, which will alter back our hormones and kind of down-regulate some of those stress hormones that are great for surviving for short periods of time and really, really damaging to our health when we look over the long term. Okay, so long-term circulation of stress hormones in our body causes just about every single chronic degenerative health illness that any grandma and grandpa anywhere has succumbed to, such as high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. All of these things are also related to what's going on the hormonal side of things. So make sure you're getting plenty of rest. And then this is a time when we also want to eat simply. Let's go back to energy. Our body's an energy system. We don't want to, eat a 12-ounce steak when we have a fever and we're feeling sluggish. In fact, you'll probably have to choke it down just to do it because our body just won't let you eat that type of food. And the reason is because it costs a lot of energy to get that food digested. Okay, so you want to eat simply, but more so you want to eat nutritiously. You don't want to eat a bunch of processed foods, refined foods that cause a spike in blood sugar. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to eat a bunch of pro-inflammatory foods either. Like you don't want to eat a bunch of dairy throughout this process either, because that can help build mucus, and that can also help create higher levels of inflammation. But you do want to eat plenty of whole foods. Any kind of food that's name ends in berry is going to really be beneficial to your immune system and your immune response. You can eat a bunch of berries, drink a lot of water, just eat simply and nutritiously. You can do, vegetable broths. Some people, they just fast. They just don't eat anything. Some kids just will not eat anything when they're sick. At this point, the most important thing to do is to really push that hydration, push that water. They're going to be just fine from a energy standpoint, calorie in versus calorie out, and they'll eat when their body's ready to. So eat simply and nutritiously. We also want to increase our supplements. Okay. I wish that we didn't have to increase our supplements, but the reality of it is that the nutrient density of our food is just so poor that increasing supplements can really help get us over the hump. So I put down a couple of key ones here. Whole food supplements. So for us, what we do, we do a lot of blending, okay? Because if you try to eat a whole bunch of food, sometimes it can fill you up before you get that nutrient stuff. So anyway, you can get whole food supplements that are really just on the nutritional facts sheet. It just lists a bunch of foods that are in there. That is ideal for that. You want to make sure you have enough essential fatty acids, particularly your omega-3 fatty acids. Because the omega-3 fatty acids, first of all, the omega-6 and omega-3s are both different types of fatty acids. We find them in all sorts of different types of foods. But our American diet is so heavy in omega-3 fatty acids and so deficient in omega-3s that this one, omega-6, that one plays a key role in the inflammatory response. Okay, so creating inflammation, which in of itself is not a bad thing. The omega-3 fatty acids create a lot of the hormones in our body and in cell wall structures that, first of all, the hormones that help calm down and start healing up inflammation. So we have stage 1 healing, stage 2 healing. Both are important. But the problem is that our scales are like this: omega-6, omega-3. So we just can't really get a hold of that inflammatory process. So that's why you want to really ramp up the omega-3 fatty acids. The most simple way to do that is through like fish oil supplementation, things like that. You want to ramp up your vitamin C. You want to make sure you're getting plenty of vitamin D. You can megadose this stuff 10, 20, 30, 40,000 international units when you're actually struggling. The vitamin D is a hormone that our body produces when the sunlight hits it. And really, if we were living in ideal conditions and living ideal lifestyles, we would get all of our vitamin D from being out in the sunshine with our shirts off, collecting as much of that sunlight as possible. But unfortunately, especially here in the Midwest, coming through the winters, where it is the cold and flu season, right? We're just completely deficient in this vitamin D. They should have been doing vitamin D. They should have been doing mandatory vitamin D instead of mandatory vaccines for some of these viral things that they're trying to treat, because it just has that much of an impact. And then we look at zinc can be really beneficial, especially in upper respiratory infections and quercetin. And then we have N-acetylcysteine, NAC. A lot of times what you'll see on the supplement bottle if you're looking at it. But what N-acetylcysteine does is it's like a precursor for your body's production of glutathione, which helps with oxidative stress. Glutathione is produced in the body, and it's a big detoxifier, and it helps calm down some oxidative stress that can cause some damage and really help with like DNA repair and immune function, things like that. So those are some big ones. And we're going to pop back just for a second and just tie this all back together when we get back into the chiropractic aspect of this and the getting extra adjustments. Okay. When we're getting extra adjustments, what we're doing is we're looking to have healthy joint motion and proprioception. Okay. That mechanoreception that helps calm the brain response down, or more adequately or more appropriately described, it allows our brain to get a better understanding of what the heck our body's trying to do so that we can respond and be more adaptive. Okay, so that's going to help create more homeostasis and allow the body to go into this rest and repair mode. So when we're subluxated, when those joints are fixated, we're going to see that nociception, or that noxious stimulus, or that annoying stimulation hitting the brain that is more of like a internal stressor that the brain has to process through, and it doesn't like it, and that kicks off the stress response as well. When the stress response happens, our body dumps glucose into our bloodstream, and then because we need energy substrates, that's why we have the stress response. We need energy, right? It's fight or flight. It's only supposed to last a short period of time. We're not ever meant to live in such a chronically stressful environment that we do now. And really, overeating is probably the number one chronic stressor that we have right now. Our bodies have no idea how to deal with it. In fact, we're way better off on the side of too few calories than too many. Our bodies have built-in defense mechanisms to handle famine better than it has overeating. But anyway, then that leads to we can get into some immunosuppression when there's too much nociception getting in there. Okay. And the adjustments help to restore all of this. And I want to show you how we do this in our office and how this all actually works, okay? So when we look at this, we hit our central nervous system. We really are looking for the body to be able to find balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. And then we have the thoughts, the traumas, the toxins, the life, if you will, come in, and it can tip the scales on that sympathetic side, the gas pedal mode, that stress response mode, where it's activated way too much. And then that can lead to nerve disturbance, nerve interference throughout the body. And the nerves, we look at that as being like the fuse box. Remember when you plugged all your appliances into one breaker and boom, you pop the breaker, you go downstairs, it might be dark in there. You got to kind of reach around, feel which one's not right, pop that breaker right back in. That's a very simplified metaphor for what it is that we do. But just to show you how how stress plays an ultimate role in how our bodies deal with health. Just look at this cardiac death chart that we have here. This is the leading, still the leading cause of death. This chart was put together through the daily death, the deaths per day recorded from cardiac events. And then we look and you can see what's at the top there. We have Christmas and New Year's, these holidays. So during the holiday season, where we're all running around like chickens with our head cut off, where we're drinking too much, we're not sleeping enough, we're eating too much, we're eating a lot more sugar, the sunshine's not as great, especially here in the Midwest, and we see this take a load, and you can see how the winter months tend to exacerbate all of easy for me to say, exacerbate, sorry. That's a fun word to say when you're talking fast. Anyway, we can see this ramping up of daily deaths. So stress is so important to get a handle on this and do everything you can to help this out. Now, how does this actually play out when we have kids come in? So this is a 2-year-old that we're looking at here. What we're looking at here is a device it's a rolling thermal instrument that we use to measure dysautonomia inside of the body. Remember, dysautonomia, the autonomic functions are everything that happens automatically. Okay, so we're able to take temperature measurements and see how efficiently the autonomic nervous system's working. When this girl first came in, she came in early on in my in practice here, probably about a year after I started practice. We started seeing this gal. She's actually in high school now, obviously, if we look at the dates and the age range. But she really stood out because she's been in the office for so long that we actually have these measurements of bodily function that we do on periodic checkups to see how well the nervous system's working. And again, that's what we're looking to fix. We're not looking to fix a bad back or an achy back or a runny nose or an ear infection. We're looking at this autonomic, we're looking at the nervous system. We're looking at how that relates to motion in the spine. But anyway, so obviously what we want to see is like this down right-hand corner here where everything's all white and balanced. That shows good function within the autonomic system. When she first came in, there was color throughout, which means there's a lot of distress within that system. Shortly after she started care, we're a month in, and we start to see a lot of that color turning into white, which is normal, healthy ranges. She still had a lot of color in that upper neck, a lot of nerve disturbance being measured in that upper neck. And then as we progress through care, here's another one. This one's about 6 months after the previous. We can see how well everything's balanced out. By this time here, 6 months later, those ear infections are gone. She never had another one again after that. And then as we roll into, little later on in life, when she's like a preteen here, we're looking at a perfectly healthy, balanced nervous system. And that's exactly what we want. That way, when we see this and someone comes in and their body's doing really well and they're fighting something off, we know that the body is acting as efficiently as what we can possibly do to help it respond and act the way that it needs to. So here's another one. We had a 3-year-old. This little guy, chronic bronchitis, had asthma, couldn't even go out and play with his brothers and sisters on a regular basis. This was more of a chronic condition, and due to the constant inflammatory processes, and remember those interleukins and how they fire off. And then he had bronchitis and asthma were his major symptoms, and he had them regularly. And then this was when he first started care. Obviously, we see, again, a big red bar in that upper neck, a bunch of color on the right side throughout, and all that temperature is balanced off to the one side, showing some dysautonomia taking place there. And then we can see what happened to his nervous system over the course of care. Here we are a year and 2 months later. Everything's really balanced out. He's going out. He's not having any problems with bronchitis. His asthma's not acting up anymore. He's playing with his brothers and sisters, and he's just loving life. This is the power of the chiropractic adjustment. We did not address anything but the spine and nervous system with these 2 examples. That's why I brought them on. However, if you do and you bring chiropractic to the table and you bring in the lifestyle patterns and behaviors of healthy individuals, then your body is going to start healing. It is going to start regulating more efficiently, because that is what it was born to do. So the big thing, the last thing, is let the body fight. We're way too fast. We're way too fast to intervene here when someone's fighting something off. Okay. Sometimes, our behaviors, our habits, our lifestyle just leads up to a good house cleaning, a good old fashioned house cleaning where the body just needs to take care of some stuff. Okay. Let your immune system do its thing. When you do that, you come out the other end stronger. When you start to interfere with this innate immune response, when you start to interfere with that, what happens is your body gets actually weaker and dumber over time. This is where you start to see increases in autoimmune disorders. The body cannot tell the difference between what's normal, healthy, or what's normal body tissue that's you versus what is a foreign invader that could damage you. Okay. I think this is maybe what vaccines do, is we're trading in some discomfort on the front end for a little bit better opportunity of chronic illness and chronic disease on the back end. So we want to be able to just observe and support and instead of just interfering and suppressing the immune response. Our kids understand, my kids understand, that a cough is a good thing, that a runny nose is a good thing. Okay. They understand that that's the body cleaning house. Although it can be temporarily uncomfortable, it makes you stronger in the end. Again, let's let the body handle and manage the acute infection instead of creating a chronic illness or a chronically ill environment internally for your body to have to work through. So the big question here is, are the things that you're doing, are the thoughts and the behaviors that you have, are the belief structures that you have regarding your health and longevity, are you doing things that are getting you sick? Are you doing the things that are going to get you well and that are going to keep you well? Enough happens in a human lifetime that tragedy is going to strike. What we need to do is make sure that our bodies are resilient, and we just need to be tough. We just need to have tougher people. Okay. We need our immune systems to be tough. We need our musculoskeletal systems to be tough. We need to be more resilient so that we can continue to adapt as the stress in our lives continues to get more complex. We need to be resilient, and that's what it takes to be well, and that's what it takes to get well. So everybody, that is all I have for you today. Thanks for hanging with me for the last 46 minutes, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace out.